Recent protests by the Black Lives Matter movement and controversy over some public statues have drawn attention to aspects of Britain's imperial past and its legacy. Now, in the first of a series of reports from around the world, Clive Myrie has been to Bristol first, where the statue of the slave trader Edward Colston was taken down, and he considers how Britain's colonial legacy is reflected today.
Who owns history? Who dictates memory? Is it always the victors?
What would you think about coloured people coming to work on the buses?
I don't like the idea very much.
What about the others? Those marginalised, like the Windrush generation?
You know, I was willing to fight for my, well, I thought which was my country, and obviously it's not.
The city of Bristol is a place where different memories vie for supremacy. But why can't there be a past we all can embrace? I'm a proud northerner, born in Bolton, of Jamaican heritage. But it could be argued Bristol is the place where I came of age, where I got my first job in journalism, the only career I've ever known. Like many West Indians and their descendants living in the UK, my lineage stretches back to Africa and the trade in human bondage, involving ports like Bristol.
Ships loaded with goods would sail from here down to West Africa. They'd then be exchanged for slaves. That human cargo would go across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. There, they'd be exchanged for cotton and sugar and tobacco. That would then sail back to the United Kingdom. The triangular trade and slavery underpinned great wealth, and it's that wealth that helped build cities like Bristol.
The legacy of slavery and the ships that sailed from here is a fractured past for me. This is true for all Britain's West Indians, the children of empire. Asher Craig grew up to become Bristol's deputy mayor.
I'm searching. I want to know who I am, and I may take the DNA test too. I need to pass down this legacy to my own children. They're also kind of on me, like, Mum, we need to know where we come from, so that when they're ready to have children, they can kind of pass on that legacy.
Now the end of their journey is near. What will they find in the land they regard as an El Dorado?
Slavery had obliterated one part of their history. Now West Indians were being encouraged to create another, asked to help rebuild Britain after the war. Mike Lord was a schoolboy, a little too old to be carried over England's threshold when he arrived in 1960, one of the Windrush generation. Like this child, he was barely out of short pants.
Well, I was crying my eyes out. I just didn't want to come to the UK. I was only 6 years of age.
The new arrivals were construction workers, bus drivers. They joined the NHS. Mike arrived on his godparents' passport with no other paperwork. Years later, when he was forced to prove he had a right to live here, he couldn't.
I felt like a leper. I just well had a tag on my back saying I'm not British, because no one will accept it, because the government made it not to employ you if you've got no paperwork to prove who you are.
Slavery, Windrush, toxic legacies of empire, history written by the victors. But this empty plinth tells a new story, that the marginalised have had enough. Last month, the statue of the 18th century slave trader and philanthropist Edward Colston was toppled in the heart of Bristol. Now he awaits restoration, but the graffiti is to be preserved. Symbol of a new understanding that the experience of victor and vanquished are part of the same story.
Well, this is one history that's been brought low, covered in mud, by people who are hoping to create a new history. But the fact is, both our faces represent Bristol.
I think nobody owns history. No one race, no one group owns history. And I'd like for us to start thinking about history in a collective sense. We should think of history as a British history. And that, I think, will encourage people to feel British, that feel that they have a stake in British society.
British colonialism defines who we all are. It's left a family album of different peoples and races. It is our story, every single moment. Clive Myrie, BBC News, in Bristol.